Hey everyone, I'm Boston 25 Chief Meteorologist Kevin Lemanos, but you probably knew that since you're watching this feed. This is Vicky, and last night we were tracking Henri, right?
Yes, I mean, it was speeding up. It was still a hurricane. Now it's a tropical storm, but we're still seeing some major impacts here across the area today.
Yeah, but things changed overnight from what we were looking at, and that's when Sherry and Jason took the ball and started running with it. And by the way, I should introduce you all to this too. That's a storm. Hi, Henri. Coming up toward the coast of Rhode Island. But what have you guys been watching this morning?
Okay, so when it went from a hurricane to a tropical storm, I think our big thing is the reason that name change was a 5-mile-per-hour difference. So you don't need like a big difference in winds to have a big difference in tidal. Since then, it's definitely continued to weaken. It's kind of looking more ragged out there now. But we have had some good gusts, and I know you've been keeping an eye on those gusts.
Yeah, gusts have been around 60, 70 miles an hour on the coast of Rhode Island. This rain now on the west side of the storm is a flooding concern for Connecticut, for western Massachusetts going forward. You know, Shira, we've been monitoring for that rotation in those outer bands all morning long.
Can't believe we haven't seen any.
And I didn't want to jinx it, but so far so good. We have not seen a whole lot of rotation here with Henri, fortunately.
Which is crazy because Vicky and I were here for Fred earlier this week, and that tropical system, we had 3 tornado warnings. We ended up with a confirmed tornado in Clinton, Mass.
Another one in Webster. The one from Thompson touched down in
crazy.
Webster also. So 2 confirmed tornadoes.
So that's what we were concerned was going to happen again today. But I mean, nothing yet. I mean, we've still got bands that we're obviously going to be watching. But I know I just heard your update, and we're kind of thinking with this more westward track, maybe getting some of the flooding out of our zone.
Right, it's in the colder water now, so it's weakening. And you know, in New England, we like 70-degree water. It's the warmest it gets here.
Do we, Kevin? I don't like 70-degree water.
I like 70-degree water. But here's the thing. These things like to be, 80, 82 degrees to at least to really start to feed off of the Atlantic, and they can't do that. So when you get into waters that are even below 80 degrees, even if they were upper 70s, which they're not, it's going to weaken, and it has been doing that. And something you mentioned, Jason, I wanted you to touch on. Yes, we're saying Henri has winds of 60 miles per hour right now, but that's maximum sustained winds. Anybody seeing that right now?
Yeah, no. I think that would be, based on estimations from pressure and satellite data. But, really to get one of those observations, I've only seen gusts in that range doing damage. Yes, we're getting trees and power lines impacted. So it's definitely a threat of a storm, but let's not be confused. And we don't have any observed sustained winds up around 60 or 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, and because of that, damage might end up being like more in the scattered fashion as opposed to something widespread and definitely skewed closer to the storm.
There are going to be people, and a lot of people, especially people who live on Cape Cod, I was going to say, well, we've had nor'easters worse than that. And we knew that. We talked about that all week long, right? When you have a tropical storm coming up this way, they tend to spread out and open up. That heavy rain goes west. The biggest wind threat stays to the east. But look at the way it's oriented. So rather than just coming like this and saying, well, the strongest winds will be to the east, now they're going to be this way, going toward the coast of
Almost like
Rhode
along
Island.
this cone, like almost like right in there.
Right, so on this side of it. So, you may get, but it's going to be weakening too as it goes toward Worcester County. I was going to say you might get some strong winds in Worcester County, and you may, but it's also going to be weakening as it goes that way. But this puts the heavy rain on this side and along the path, which, as Jason was saying, is more western Massachusetts and into New York on the direction that it's going right now. A little bit of wiggle room left, guys, right? But it's a pretty small area where this could still move.
And it's getting harder and harder to find the defined like center of that storm as well. Hurricanes, you get eyes. Tropical storms, you don't have eyes, and it's very ragged. We've got all the rain skewed to one side. So yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it passed really close to Block Island. Doesn't look like we had a landfall there, but we'll have to see what they consider a landfall moving forward.
But no doubt there'll be a landfall of a tropical storm. Vicky, you had looked that up. The statistic,
Yes, the
right?
last time we saw this was back in 2008, so it's been a while, and we don't tend to see landfall tropical systems, hurricanes. We've been talking about this week, the anniversary of Bob was a hurricane, and it's been 30 years since we've had a landfalling hurricane here. So.
And it's going to be at least 30 years and one more day, it looks like, because this will not be a hurricane.
Yes.
Certainly, it no longer is. So, but people will say, well, what about the storm? What about Fred? Wasn't that a tropical storm that made landfall here? But it wasn't.
It wasn't, and so that was the remnants of it, and that's when it gets a little tricky. You have these at once was a tropical system, and then they start to lose some of those tropical characteristics, which is what we're seeing right now, and they become what we call extratropical systems. So still going to see rain, wind, and we're not done with this just yet. We still have a ways to go with that rain.
Sure do, yeah. Well, in some areas, but the interesting thing is to see how dry it is in eastern Massachusetts, at least as we're talking to you now, and what is it, at 12:30 in the afternoon when we're doing this. So this is coming ashore with hardly any rain in southeastern Mass
so
right now.
much
There were
spottier.
bands, you guys had bands earlier that
Yeah.
produced some heavy
Yeah,
rain,
it was like
right?
half an inch of rain, I think, in an
Quick
hour in
hitting.
Boston. It was like,
Bam, in and out, and, you know, we were not seeing them redeveloping, because, again, it's all shifting on the west side like we were talking about.
So look, we'll keep watching this. Obviously, there are going to be some impacts or power outages. There are going to be some trees down. We've seen that already. But, you know, it's going to be a weakening tropical system coming on through right now. So what looked like, and by the way, we should mention this. This started, earlier in the week, coming out here,
yes,
and then it was here,
yeah,
and then it was Buzzards Bay,
yeah. And then it was Narragansett Bay.
and then in Narragansett Bay, and then Groton, then Brantford, and then somewhere in Fairfield County, it was cutting across Long Island. That's where the tracks have been all week long, and we've been adjusting along with the National Hurricane Center based on what we were seeing. Then we started to see an eastward jog back toward the eastern end of Long Island, and now it ends up being right here, which, if you go back and look at some of my previous Facebook posts, a couple days ago, it looked exactly like this, but then the Weather
think
Service,
Friday
the
it
Hurricane
looked
Center
like that.
adjusted it. So it's not been a horrible, I mean, look, this is how many miles? 100 miles or so.
Yeah.
It's really not been a bad forecast. It's just a matter of miles makes such a
And
huge
that's
difference
why we
with
have
this.
a cone, right?
Absolutely.
A
That's
cone.
cone.
A
That's
center
exactly where I
could
was
go
going with that, yep.
anywhere in there. It's not an exact point.
You can't, and I know we put this line on here to show the center line of that cone, but this is a really good lesson that you can't pay attention just to the center of the tracks, because it's going to vary one way or the other. And that's why we're telling people to be prepared out here. Because if it had stayed hurricane strength and it was coming back this way after it looked like it was going over there and people let their guard down, you'd be hurting. And luckily you're prepared. And the good thing is, if you have that kit made, just save it. Those canned goods will keep, the bandages will keep, whatever you have in an emergency kit, because we will get another hurricane here. It's been 30 years, but it'll happen again. We're just getting lucky this time.